Hey, it's Jonathan.
Yeah, I was clocking in. He didn't tell you.
No, let's roll with it.
Hey, what's up, Leroy?
What's up, buddy? How are you?
How you doing? Pretty good. So, had a revelation last night. I think that it's the layout of the intake is really squishing us pretty hard. The radiators up here, there's no way to get exhaust up to and then back from low in the car or forward in the car without going through the radiators. While there's a ton of room in the side fenders, we have a washer jug over there. We can put 6 turbos over there. We have the dry sump, the oil tanks over here, but the oil tank can be moved. The battery can go to the back of the car, oil tank can be moved, we can put turbos down there. But Damon's asked to have the turbos high side and he wants to see them. So that being the case, I need to be able to get the exhaust up to the turbos, and then quite frankly, it's like, while we could just dump these up in the sky, I think that's a silly way of running this car. And so really what I'm going to investigate now is taking the upper plenums off, and then I'm going to chop the outside edge of the upper plenum off completely. So you see these 2 horns right here. I'm actually going to remove these horns, or at least this is the idea right now. Remove that horn, cut off the throttle body mount, move the throttle body mount to the front of the intake on it, and then so we'll recoat it and everything will be nice. But it gains us all this access right here to the top of the header. As you can see, a heat shield right here. And so hopefully what we're able to do is I'm going to build a stepped log style manifold and then bring them up and over into the turbos, probably do the wastegates right off the end of it and then turn into the turbo, and then the wastegates will come up and have little horns coming through the hood, but we'll go ahead and run the exhaust dumped back down, hook up to the existing exhaust, so that the tips, the rest of the exhaust, the holes in the back of the car are all utilized effectively, and so the exhaust still runs out the back of the car, we'll waste out of the top, and so we've got fire coming out of the hood, fire coming out of the back of the car, and we can see the turbos. I really do think that simply chopping the intake manifolds is probably going to be the fastest way to get to where we want to be, and opens up a lot of space for getting exhaust up and back down. So that's the plan for today, is just kind of investigate this further. So what I've already done is I've already pulled off these long tubes on the front of it. And so best I can figure, like I said, knowing nothing about this particular engine, is that I have to assume that this is for intake plenum volume, either between modulation of throttle, the needs of the intake, or the cylinders themselves. They needed more volume in the intake, and this was one way that they got it, or this is some kind of resonance issue. I'm not sure why they built them, they did, but the neat thing is there's already a hole in the end of it, so it'd be easy to move the throttle body there.
Sweet baby Jesus. That's a lot of information.
Yeah, well, and then so whenever we do that, and you go, oh, Aaron, that's a lot to take in, so I'll give you the bite-sized piece. Are you ready?
Yeah.
So last night, a lot of options on turbo places, but ultimately I was asked to make them topside, so one of the biggest issues was getting exhaust from the heads up to the turbos back to wherever the exhaust needed to go. And so what I'm investigating right now is taking the upper intake plenum, which is the red part here, and then the lower being the gray part. We're actually going to zip off the side of it that has the throttle body attached to, and move the throttle body up front. It gives us a large pathway for getting the exhaust from the head up to the turbo, and the turbo back to hooking it up to the rest of the exhaust. I really think this is the most viable option for making the car the most drivable, the quickest to build, and for Damon to be the happiest. So we'll see how it goes. curious about it, but you know, it's, like I said, this won't take 30 pounds. I don't know that it'll take 6.
6, I think, is honestly like somewhere near the ceiling where fucking those manifolds.
What did you say this thing was? You said it's like 13.1 motor?
13.5.
No dice. I think I might have it. Gasket's pissed.
Are you off?
Dude, yeah, hold on,
we're almost done.
They've got all these hoses attached to it. Surprising. I can't get to any of them. Alright. Let me try this again. Until we find the next hose. Pull the DI pump to get it out.
So it looks like it's just the gasket's snagged on the lower dowel pin, that far bottom corner.
I'm gonna have to go now so this is it.
Plenum's loose, but the gasket's still.
Yeah, but it's hung on the.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you can hand that to me, I can stab it.
Can you?
Yeah.
Because it's between the frame and the DI pump. It's pretty. So the way the car is set up, the way it's built, this is the upper intake, and so there's an extension on the end of it that we believe is for volume in the intake. Being boosted, we no longer need this. This isn't something that we need. And then you can see where the throttle body location is. Well, on this car here, to get the turbos forward and up front, one of the problems is I don't have a clean way of getting there because of the chassis, because of the radiator, because of a lot of things. So I kind of theorized, what if we took the throttle body off and we were to move the throttle body to the front of it and we were to cut off the side of the intake? If we do that, I now have the ability to get the exhaust up to the turbo around the side of the motor and get the exhaust, spin exhaust out of the turbo back into the existing exhaust and exit the back of the vehicle. So as of now, most likely, I'm going to cut off the side of this. I have no idea how much this intake is. Hundreds of thousands of dollars apparently. You can only get it if you buy a car. I have no idea. But we're going to cut the side of it off, move the throttle body, and that should afford us the room that we desperately need to get the turbos mounted up front. So that's about it. Not a lot to it. And we really kind of made this decision after we got everything open. We kind of made this decision after we opened everything up and realized that there really wasn't much inside of it, and so there wasn't many other things to consider. So I really think it's going to be a good solution to get us where we need to be. Leroy, you got any questions?
Oh, where's that oil from?
So when we first took the car, the intakes off, it's like you could see it was evident there were pools in the little extensions on the end of the intake manifolds, but just quite a bit of oil. And like, honestly, I'm not very familiar with these cars, so I'm not sure how much is normal. But it is a very high revving motor, and so we can create a lot of pressure in the crankcase. And as you can see right here, it's like this is the breather system, which basically all the pressure that's created in the bottom of the engine has to go somewhere. And so there are several advantages to actually pulling a vacuum by pulling all that oily air up into the intake manifold. And so that is really a residual of that. It's not necessarily a bad thing at all. It just seemed like there was a lot, but there again, I'm not familiar with these motors. And every motor's a little different, every manufacturer's a little different, uses different ring gaps, different ring materials, different cylinder walls. And so that being said, every motor's a little different. So I don't know if this is good or bad. We just noticed it, and we'll keep an eye on it, and we'll consider it as we get into tuning. And if we really start noticing an issue, there was an indicator that maybe there was damage on a ring or something like that. But right now, we don't believe anything's wrong at all. It's just quite a lot of oil, and it gets into the intake through the breather system. So I think I've found a conclusion. If we're going to put the turbos up top and out front, the radiator's a problem, the suspension, the chassis is a problem, but we looked at the intake a little longer, and I think that if I take off the whole side of it, basically where the throttle body is located, if I cut that off, cap that, and move the throttle body to the front of the intake, it frees up a lot of room so I can get the exhaust from the heads up to the turbos and from the turbos back down. And while I've been asked to just hood exit the exhaust, I really feel like it's going to leave a lot of the car naked, particularly the back of the car, and it's going to be awfully loud and right there, on top of the hood and obnoxious. So I think that what I'm going to do is waste through the top of the hood and hook the exhaust back up. And by moving or chopping off the sides of the intake, I believe I can get to the turbo, away from the turbo, and back to the exhaust, and everything's going to work out really well. So that's what we're going to work on, tomorrow, is actually look at mounting the turbos over where the ECMs are located, and then look what my plumbing is going to look like to get to it. But as soon as I get these headers off, I'll have to start drawing the new manifolds so that we can start building the manifold, the new one, to the turbo. So that's kind of where we're at now. Is basically get the headers off.